Buzz 呢是它这个 Fabulous 这个公司，大家也看到它这个介绍了啊。它实际上是一个非常，如果做这个移动开发有一定经验的都知道，它其实这个公司非常成功。它有一个叫 Tablet Revenge， 还有它一系列的这个应用非常的成功。然后呢，它现在这个 Tablet 这个公司呢已经被这个迪士尼收购啊。现在呢，这个 Buzz 本人呢已经是同时也是迪士尼移动这块的负责人。好，大家鼓掌欢迎。
你们好，不好意思，我的中文说的不太好。Today I'm going to tell you about my experience on the App Store building an iPhone business. And I'll tell you how we made it work and what we learned from it, and hopefully that can help you with your business. But first, a little bit of background on myself. I am from Belgium, and I always like to travel and learn about new cultures and new languages, and that's had a big impact on how I do business as well. I studied at an international school, a European school, so that's how I was exposed to speaking French and Italian and Spanish, and it really helped me. And also another passion of mine has been music. I was a DJ in high school, and for the last few years, music has been a big part of how we've built a great business on the iPhone. I left Belgium to study law at Stanford. I never really wanted to be a lawyer, but I wanted to be in Silicon Valley, and I liked Stanford. And I didn't know what I wanted to do, but I was excited by the energy of California, the entrepreneurial spirit, and the power of technology. So I moved there, studied law, and didn't know what I wanted to do, but I know I wanted to be in the middle of it. And what I ended up doing is, when I was a student, I lived in the middle of Silicon Valley in a poor neighborhood called East Palo Alto, where we were right next to the heart of Silicon Valley, but there were people that had no access to technology. And I started volunteering, helping kids use computers and connect to the internet. And I spent 6 years of my life building a community center, where children learned how to tell stories with computers, teenagers made money building websites, and we taught computer classes so adults could get better jobs. One of the people I met there was a guy that wrote the Macintosh operating system. His name was Andy Hertzfeld. And he came to me one day and said he wanted to start a new company. He was very excited about the promise of Linux and very eager to break the monopoly that Microsoft had. And he spent a lot of time telling me that it was really bad that one company controlled our computing platforms and that we needed to change that. And so we started a company called Easel to make Linux easy to use. The company didn't succeed, but the software was open source, so it's still in use. And the group of people that I worked with was extraordinary. Our VP of engineering had started next with Steve Jobs. His name is Bud Tribble, and he's at Apple right now, and he is like CTO for Apple today. And many of our engineers moved to Apple, where they built Safari and big pieces of the iPhone. So lots of great things came out of Easel. I then spent a year and a half in Korea because I wanted to travel, I wanted to learn a new language and experience a different part of the world. And I worked for 2 internet startups and learned Korean. After that, I came back in 2003 and was asked to help launch a browser, which was a really crazy idea at the time, because browsers meant nobody knew what a browser was. Everybody just used the internet, right? It was called Internet Explorer. But with Firefox, we brought the browser back. And because of that, today, the internet is based on open standards. And because of that, today, we can have powerful smartphones where you can enjoy rich content on any number of devices. So it was really exciting work that we did, and it really changed the world. And I don't think we would be here today with our Android devices and our iPhones if it wasn't for Firefox. I did the deals, the business deals for Firefox with Google and Amazon and Yahoo, and launched the browser in 20 or 30 different countries at the same time for the initial launch. That led to another browser company that was based on Firefox and also open source called Flock, where I built on what we did at Firefox and built a social web browser. And after a year, I handed the company over to a new management team, and I went to a venture capital firm, DCM, Doll Capital Management. They're very active in China, actually, so that's how I spent a little bit of time in China. And at DCM, I thought about what I wanted to do next for about 6 months. And then the iPhone came out, and I started a company called Tapulous that I'm going to tell you about, which was recently acquired by Disney. So now I run mobile for Disney. So I want to tell you today is 3 things. I want to tell you why I started the company, the background and what we saw, how we became successful on the App Store, and what we learned from it that may be useful to you as application developers or entrepreneurs. In 2007, I had been trying out different phones, and my phone was driving me crazy because it had all these features, right? It had a camera and an MP3 player, and it could do email, and it could browse the web, but they didn't work. They kind of worked on a good day, but the internet was slow, the pictures were poor, I could not move my MP3s from my computer to my phone, the quality was very poor, and the batteries didn't last, and the phones crashed. So I literally went through 7 or 8 different phones in a year and a half. I kept changing it. I went from Nokia to Sony Ericsson. I used a Palm. I used a Windows Mobile computer. I used a BlackBerry. And none of them did what I wanted them to do. This is as I was sitting around trying to figure out what I wanted to do next in my life. And then the iPhone came out in June of 2007. And I think I quite literally got rid of my old phones. So I don't think I put them on fire, but I did get rid of them. Because here's a phone that actually worked. And it was just a fantastic experience. As I'm sure it was for many people here that tried out the phone. And so I didn't know what I wanted to do, but I was having fun with the phone because finally it worked. And then I started noticing, after a few months, interesting stories coming out about the iPhone. So for example, on Christmas, Google announced that they were getting more searches from the iPhone than from all the Nokia phones combined, and then later from all the other phones combined. That's big, and I started hearing more such stories. And so what I did then is I started getting to know people that were in the community building applications for the iPhone. Now this is in October, November of 2007, so 1 year before App Store. And there were people building apps, right? There was no App Store, you were not supposed to build apps, but I brought a phone to China on July 2, 2007 and gave it to a friend, and then he was using it a week later, right? So iPhones came to China very quickly, and people jailbroke them. They figured out how to make iPhone work in China. They figured out how to make the iPhone work on different networks, and they started building applications for it, right? And again, in China there were several million people using the iPhone before it officially launched. So I started to get to know these people and trying to figure out what they were doing. And one of my favorite examples and stories that really motivated me to start the business was this little app that's pretty ugly. It's called Listen. It was called Listen, and it was just ugly purple with a button. And you push the button, and it would record the music in your car or on your radio. And 5 seconds later, it would tell you what song you're listening to. There's an app called Shazam, right? That's very, very popular that does that now. Well, this is before. This is September 2007. And the app, after 3 days, it disappeared. So I called the woman that wrote the app. Her name is Erica Sadoun. And I said, Erica, what happened? And she said, well, I use a company to figure out what song is playing, and they shut me down after 3 days. And I called them and asked them why they shut me down. And in 3 days, I had 50,000 users. And I had sent them more traffic than their entire traditional phone business in the last year and a half. So I was killing their servers. So these are the kind of stories I started hearing, and what I realized was there's something big going on here. And what we have seen in technology is every 10 years, for the last 50 years, there has been a big disruptive technology, a big technology wave that changes the industry and in many cases changes how we do business and how consumers behave. So first there was the mainframe in the 1950s and 60s, and then the mini computer, and then of course the personal computer came out in the 1980s, and we all started using computers. And then 10 years later was the internet. And so when I started seeing these data points from Google, listening to Erica talk about her app, I realized the iPhone wasn't just a little better, and it wasn't just going to change behaviors a little bit, but was going to change everything in a big way, and was going to mark the beginning of the mobile decade. And this was going to be a big disruptive technology. And what we've learned is when there's a big disruption, a big technology that changes things, big new companies are created. So I wanted to be there because I thought there would be a big opportunity to build an exciting business on a technology that I loved, that I had so much fun playing with. So the first fundamental belief we had was that the iPhone would be a game changer, would be disruptive. The second fundamental belief that we had as we decided to start the company was that the real value in what we do is not in working with users one-on-one, but is in building a community, a network of users. What we have seen from the last decade is the most valuable companies are companies that build a network where users talk to each other, are connected to each other, and invite their friends into the business. Facebook, YouTube, Twitter today. So we had two fundamental beliefs when we started the company. Number one, the iPhone was going to be a game changer. And number two, the value of what we would do would be in building a network and a community. Other than that, we didn't know what we were going to do. This is January 2008, so maybe 6 months before the App Store launched. So what we did is we started making apps. Again, before the App Store. And I had about 30 apps that people were using. I had about 5 million users. And we had a photo sharing app where you could send pictures to your friends. We had a little app where you could review restaurants, you could share wallpaper. We had a Twitter application. We had about 30 apps in total. But then one of them really took off, and that's Revenge. So let me show you a little video.